I probably would have left it alone and gone on with my life without her, but it was his smirk that did it. He made me act with that smirk, and whether she saw it or not, their utter disrespect tore at my soul. It was obvious that Samantha, who I had been with for 6 years, would not be my wife for long. Part of the problem in our marriage was that I had been working too hard for the past 6 months. I was in line for a major promotion, and with it would come a very significant increase in salary. This meant that Sam could quit her job and we could start our family. The other problem was that Samantha was a beautiful woman, one of those stunning beauties who never learned to be a when men flirted with her. Not that she flirts back, but she has a wonderful smile that sends the wrong signal. Since Sam looks a lot like Scarlett Johansson, same beautiful face and great body, only taller, men naturally gravitate towards her. For a while, I had my suspicions. She worked late too often and had to travel out of town more often. But the smirk on his face at their company holiday party was irrefutable proof. I almost had to get Sam to invite me to that party, and now I knew why. Respect is an important thing in my family. By the way, my name is John Simoncelli. If you'll spare a few minutes, I'll give you just one example. In high school, I was the best player on my high school team. It was early in the season, and we were facing the team that had the best chance of keeping us out of the championship game. The opposing pitcher threw a fastball right at my head. The ball flew past my face but hit my helmet. I got up and ran to first. I looked up at the pitcher and he gave me a smirk and then quietly said with just his lips, I lunged at him and surprised the shit out of him. Instead of playing like most baseball fights, I punched him with my fist right in the nose, shattering it and drenching his beautiful white uniform with blood. After that, all hell broke loose. I was suspended pending a hearing on whether I would be permanently disqualified. My coach had a fair amount of disgust for me, but my old man agreed with me as he drove me home. I saw what that asshole did and I said to myself, you can't let these clowns disrespect you. Everything will go down the drain after they find out they have your balls. However, the coach's disapproval bothered me. He had been my coach for the past 3 years, and I wanted him to respect me. When I showed up at his office the next day, he gave me a lecture I've never forgotten, until now. What do you care what some tells you? You know where I grew up, at State and 75th Street, where some thug was always trying to piss me off. I was lucky. Neither my mother nor father would tolerate any fights. It helped me stay on track for college and get out of the slums. Now I live where I want to live, doing what I love, and those thugs are either dead, in jail, or living in a room with a needle in their arm. So here's the deal. If you play at my place again, there will be no more fights, no matter what the circumstances. I ended up being suspended for 3 games. Somebody was looking out for me because Ron Muller, the opposing catcher, showed up at the hearing. He seemed disgusted with the way his coach was trying to win. Their coach had the pitcher throw that ball with the intent to permanently disqualify me. Ron didn't want to win the title that way and saved my ass. Ron ended up being the catcher on my college team and eventually the best man at my wedding to Sam. Back to the present. I could have gotten over it if Samantha had shown some respect and just said, it's over and I'm leaving. I've been dumped before. True, not since college, and not from a woman who stood in front of 100 of our friends and family and swore to love me forever, but I could handle it. Trust me. Ever since Sam got her way, apparently by with her coworker Jacob Harris and coming home to spare me a few seconds, I've felt like one of those cartoon characters. My coach on one shoulder whispering in my left ear, pick a big road and go, and my dad on the other shoulder yells in my right ear, crush them both, son. It didn't take me long or any secret spy tricks to get the specific evidence I needed. The Monday morning after the party at her company, I quit my job, hired a divorce attorney, and hired a private investigator. The first night that week, when Sam called me to tell me she was working late, I called the former police detective and he followed them to the asshole's townhouse. There are no pictures of them actually having sex, but I'm pretty sure they didn't spend 2 hours in his townhouse analyzing spreadsheets. Everything was ready for Sam's next visit to his house. Friday night, she called me to let me know that she and a couple of women from the office were going out for drinks and dinner. Don't wait up, John. It's been a long time since I've had a hen party. An hour after her call, I drove to the address the detective had given me and saw Sam's car parked in the driveway. I knocked on the door and was surprised when he opened the door, standing in his bathrobe with the same smirk. Never mind, John. I'm a black belt in karate. I'm not here to start anything, Jacob. She's yours now, and the last thing I need is a lying, cheating as a wife. Tell Sam to come to the door so I can deliver these papers. I showed him the heavy paper envelope. I called out, Sam, come down the stairs, no need to hide. Sam came down the stairs wearing a robe just like the assholes. I almost smiled. Sam, here are the divorce papers. Get yourself an attorney and have him or her contact mine to negotiate a settlement. Do not come home tonight or any time until tomorrow night. I'll have my things out of our apartment by then, and you can come back. Sam took the envelope as if it were radioactive. John, my parents and my brother's family were supposed to come over for brunch tomorrow. What am I supposed to tell them if I'm not there? No problem, Sam. Just before I got here, I emailed your brother and gave him this address. I told him that you and Jacob would be hosting your family here, not at our apartment. I'm assuming he will get the message in time. If not, I'll let them know about the change of venue when they arrive tomorrow. Bye. I looked at Sam. She started to break down and cry, but then I saw it on her left hand and I almost lost my temper. Sam, you didn't even have the decency to take off my grandmother's wedding ring when you had that bastard. Give it to me now. The ring you gave me is in the envelope with the divorce papers. Sam finally broke down, but still took the ring off her finger. I walked away without another word. I wasn't completely surprised when the doorbell rang at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. Perhaps her brother hadn't gotten my email in time after all. This is going to be awkward, I thought, as I looked out the window and saw Sam's family on the porch. I had no idea how awkward until I opened the door. John, we're sorry. I got your email and talked to Sam. Can we come in and talk? For the next hour, her brother, mother, and father did everything they could to convince me that I should let Sam in the house and refuse the divorce. It seems Sam went to her brother's house after I left her and Jacob, confessed everything, and asked for their help. Sam knew I loved her mom and dad, especially since my parents had moved to the Sunshine State after my dad retired. The three of them talked about counseling, forgiveness, pity, etc. I spent the next hour trying to convince them it wasn't going to happen. No one was happy and there were no smiles when they left. It took all my willpower not to hug my mother-in-law when she came out on the porch. She was crying and I wanted to tell her it was okay, but it wasn't and I didn't hug her. For the next few months, we danced against each other as usual until the divorce was final. She wanted to talk, I didn't. Her lawyer sought counseling, mine said it would be a waste of time and money. The marriage was irretrievably broken because of my wife's infidelity. A week before the divorce, I was invited to Ron's house for dinner. He knew more unpleasant details about why Sam and I had broken up than I did, because his wife, Jelly, and Samantha still communicated occasionally. I sat in his kitchen and watched his wife, Jelly, make dinner. Jelly, that's what we all call her, was 7 months pregnant and just glowing. Ron saw me looking at her belly and realized what I was thinking. John, let's go out on the porch and chat. I'll meet you there. I'm out of here. I headed for the fridge and put my arm around Jelly's waist on the way. He adores you, Jelly. Don't ever cheat on him. Why would I do that, John? I love this man, and soon we'll have a little boy. I'm not crazy. That's what I would have said about Samantha a year ago. Look at us now, 6 days after the divorce. Sam got John. I'm nowhere near as dumb. Ron's not going to try to talk me out of this, is he? Go in there and listen to what he has to say. I'll tell you what I tell Sam every time she calls. I'll support you both in any way I can, except for giving either of you my opinion on what you two should do. I kissed Jelly on the cheek and walked outside. I handed Ron one of the cans of beer and waited. John, Sam wants to meet with you and talk before the divorce becomes final. She called me and asked me to invite you. That's not surprising. I thought about it for a while because it's not the first time she's asked. Why should I give her the satisfaction of her remorse? All it would do is to calm her down, and I'm not going to give her that. I wouldn't either, John. But let me ask you this. Do you have any unresolved questions that she can answer for you? If so, turn it over to her. Get your questions answered first, then do whatever you want. Go out, stay, and listen to whatever. What he said made sense. So you didn't call me down here to give her another chance? No, John. I only want what's best for you. As far as the divorce goes, I agree with you. I met Sam the night before our trial at a small cafe. We asked for a table in a quiet corner. Thanks for meeting me, John. Sam looked like she was about to burst into tears. It took all my willpower not to think of her little hands. I didn't give her a chance to start the discussion. Sam, I know you have something to say to me, but I have a couple questions first. The waiter chose that moment to take our drink orders and start talking about the chef's specialties. I interrupted him as politely as I could, ordered a bottle of wine and a chef's salad for two, and asked the waiter to please leave us alone as much as possible. He understood. Sam, my first question is, why? I thought we had something special. We were special, John, but the reasons for my actions are all old cliches. We were together and exclusive for 7 years. I was seduced by a good-looking guy at work who complimented me on everything. You spent more and more time thinking about work or being at work. That's not fair, Sam. You know I spent hours just to get a promotion. You wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and I tried to make that possible. I know that, John. I knew it then, too. But at the time, I was a selfish, and I wanted it all. Right now, I can't believe I screwed up so badly. We were less than a year away from having our babies. I even had names. Tears were streaming from her eyes, and I was still fighting back from holding her hands. Good. I promised myself I wouldn't ask, but I had to know. Was he that much better in bed than me? Sam surprised me. She started laughing through her tears. No, 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 no. He was nowhere near as good at making love. Sam didn't notice the waiter coming up behind her when she said that, and when he set the wine down, he took a moment to look at my lap and smiled as he left. Sam blushed like a beet, and we laughed together for the first time in 6 months. We were done with the salads and wine. Sam spent time trying to get me to accept her apology, but I didn't give up. I told her that I might someday, but that it was too rude and too soon. As we got up to leave, Sam dropped one last bomb on me. That's another reason for my actions. John, sometimes you can be as cold as ice. Our marriage ends tomorrow, and you're like a statue. No tears, no screaming. I cry myself to sleep every night. Did you really love me? Sam, I loved you more than you can imagine. But first, let's get a couple things straight. Several times tonight you mentioned your actions. Let's call it what it was. You cheated on me, Sam. You slept with another man when you should have been faithful, leaving everyone else behind. Secondly, whether I go home tonight and get drunk or cry is my business. Chances are, after our divorce tomorrow, you and will be a couple. He's already shown what he thinks of me by screwing my wife, dissolving my marriage, and laughing at me the whole time. If I cry now, or tell you about my bad nights, you're sure to tell him one day? Then that arrogant jerk will have another laugh at my expense. Don't push me, Sam. You don't want to see the demon that lurks beneath the surface. I didn't go to court the next day. My lawyer took care of it. It was a modern, no-fault divorce with equitable division of property. The marriage had just broken up that day. Months passed after the divorce. I used that time to plan. I did get a promotion at work and a big raise, but I didn't have anyone or anything to spend it on. I probably spent too much time on the site after Ron told me about it one night over drinks. Ron gave me the background of the loving wives category and told me that there are hundreds of stories where an abandoned husband takes revenge on an ex and her lover. I read the stories, took notes, and evaluated my favorite methods of revenge. The ideas that would get me into jail were rated pretty low. Psychological terror was rated pretty high. The rating changed after I had the misfortune of running into Jacob one afternoon. I didn't know it at the time, but after our divorce, Jacob and Sam had started dating again and were now engaged. Jacob let me know that he won. I lost. Sam was a fantastic that he couldn't get enough of, and I must have something wrong with my tool since Sam was so easy to get into bed with when we were married. Was I a coward for turning around and walking away? I wasn't afraid of Mr. Black Belt, but I'd just spent 2 years busting my ass to get that promotion. And any physical altercation would have let that half of my life go down the drain. This guy has already ruined my personal life. Would he get the satisfaction of ruining my work life too? I quit. My method of payback came to me like a thunderclap. It's a funny trait of some guys. They can't help themselves and dip their quill in the company inkwell. Jacob was no exception. Sam wasn't the first woman from their company he dated. One day I got a call from Helen Smith, a woman I had met at one of the company parties. She wanted to meet me for dinner, her treat. Jacob and Helen were getting serious, she thought, when he suddenly started treating her like a disease. Jacob left Helen when he decided to pursue my wife. The relationship between Jacob and Helen heated up again while Sam fought our divorce, but immediately turned cold when the divorce went through and Jacob and Sam became a couple again. Helen was furious, and hell hath no fury like that from a woman scorned. How could you let Jacob steal your wife without even a... I was at that holiday party last December, and I saw how Jacob behaved. I was still in love with Jacob and hoped you would fight for your wife. You did nothing. Are you ignorant or just weak? That dinner invitation was Helen's attempt to give me a hard-on. I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of my drink, and considered how I would respond to her challenge. Helen, I'm sorry. I don't know you. I don't know how much I can trust you. The amount of trust is limited at this point. But I can tell you that I'm not weak, and that there will be consequences someday. Have you ever heard the saying, revenge is a dish best served cold? Helen looked at me. I hadn't thought of that. You're Sicilian? That's right. And if you're really interested in some kind of revenge, just sit tight for a while and one day I'll call you and ask you for a favor. Nothing illegal, but very important. I got home that evening and my ideas began to clear up. But could I trust Helen to keep her mouth shut? I secretly made inquiries with someone I could trust, and he confirmed Helen's story. Helen and Jacob were dating, and their breakup coincided with the revelation of Sam and Jacob's relationship. As we talked, my source apologized for missing the first date and not giving me advance notice. He kindly informed me that upper management was tired of the romantic trauma associated with Jacob's affairs, was in the process of rewriting corporate policy regarding workplace romances, and that Jacob was rumored to be skating on very thin ice. During my separation and for 2 months after my divorce, I hired escorts for my sexual and social release. Cindy Fox, I believe her professional name, and I would go out to dinner or a show every 2 to 3 weeks and end up having sex in bed for a couple hours before she went home. It cost me a tidy sum, but like I said, I had nowhere else to spend my increased salary after my promotion. This was the first time I'd ever paid for sex, at least directly, but I didn't want to tempt myself into a renewed relationship, so Cindy became my go-to whenever I had the urge. She also became an integral part of my plans. I called Helen and told her that if she was willing, she had only 2 tasks. First, to give me Samantha's schedule for when she was out of town on business. Second, to approach Jacob at the right time and ask him to meet her in a public place to get it over with. Helen called me the next day. Sam was to be out of town in 2 weeks for 3 days and nights. Helen had contacted Jacob and arranged to meet him the first night of Sam's trip at a bar, just to have a drink and a chat. But I'm sure Jacob thought it might be the last time he would meet Helen. Cindy laughed when I explained the first part of my plan, but I truly shocked her when I laid out the second part. Cindy, have any of the women who do what you do ever gotten a social disease? I'm not talking about deadly things like AIDS. I'm talking about treatable things like gonorrhea. Sure, it happens, but rarely. Most girls insist on condoms. I know a couple who have sex without a condom, but they try to be careful and charge double for the privilege. There have been a couple of girls like that who had to be treated. Can you do me a favor, please? Let me know when one of the girls has something to add. I'll pay her for sex without a rubber, and I'll pay you the same as I would for a finder's fee. You're kidding, right? You want to get this guy something? Nothing lethal, just something to ruin his wedding night. Everything was ready for part 1. Cindy told me the details later that night. She was sitting at the bar sipping a when Jacob walked in and sat down next to her. They exchanged smiles, and Jacob ordered a scotch. Cindy was dressed in a casual business suit and looked very professional. Almost immediately, Jacob's cell phone rang. Of course, Helen, I understand. I hope your mom is feeling better. Jacob hung up the phone and immediately turned to Cindy. Hi, I just got dumped because my girlfriend's mom is sick. Can I get you some more? Cindy smiled broadly at Jacob. Sure, I can handle 2, but don't try to get me drunk. I've been on the road for 2 weeks and I haven't seen my husband in 2 weeks. The girl was starting to get turned on. Cindy flashed the engagement ring I bought at the pawn shop for the occasion. It was like waving a red cape in front of a bull. Jacob took the bait. My name is Jacob. Nice to meet you. Anne. They drank and chatted a bit for half an hour. Cindy had actually had her 3rd drink and was trying her best to appear a little tipsy. Before she finished the 3rd, Jacob tried his best to seduce her. Light touches on her arm and leg, charming conversation with just enough sexual innuendo to try to warm her up. Cindy told me it was hard not to laugh at all the work he was putting in, considering she was being paid. Finally, she got tired of being seduced. She finished her and invited him up to her room. Jacob and Cindy slept together twice in her room. Of course, Jacob didn't realize that the entire event was being photographed. Cindy kicked him out, saying she needed to recover and get some sleep. but not before getting his cell phone number. Then she and I went through the pictures on my laptop. I promised that any pictures in which she could be identified would be erased before the camera or memory card left the room. Even after deleting half of the photos, we still had a few dozen that Jacob has this stranger in. The wedding was still a month away, and I hoped we'd be lucky before the end of the month. 2 weeks later, Cindy called me with news. One of the girls had gonorrhea. I only found out because she had asked me and another girl to fill in for her while she took her medicine. Did you tell her about my request? Briefly. She's willing to talk, but keep in mind that she's a professional and will probably charge you double because she thinks you'll have a hard time finding a replacement. What about your rate? Does that change? No, I guess we have a deal, and you always take good care of me. And that's true because I always left her an extra tip. So Cindy and I met with this young lady, she insists on not naming names, and worked out the details for part 2. It's going to cost me a few thousand, but it's worth it. Cindy calls Jacob the next day. Hi, Jacob, honey. It's Anne from the Hyatt Hotel. Remember me? How could I forget? Are you in town? Yeah, I was wondering if you're ready for the sex of your life. Pretty. We had a lot of fun that night, but what are you willing to do to make it the sex of my life? I'm here at the Hyatt with a coworker. She's rampant, and after what I told her, she thought you could handle both of us this evening. Can you handle it? Of course, Jacob's self-esteem led him to believe that 2 women would want to screw him. I just need to make a quick phone call and I'll be in the lobby. Not in the hall. Just go up to room 449. We'll be here. Bring some Capital One chilled. When Jacob arrived in room 449, our mystery girl was there, but Cindy wasn't. Where's Anne? He asked. Anne got a call from home. Her son was sick and she returned to her room, familiarizing her husband with the daily routine. It was the first time he was dealing with a sick child, she said. But you and I can get started. And they did. Cindy never showed up, but our mystery girl did her best to make Jacob forget about the 3. After he left at 10, she met us at a local cafe and picked up the rest of the money I owed her. I admit I felt like doing that to a guy, but he's such an asshole that by the time he left, I had pretty much calmed down. She took the envelope and walked out the door. Cindy looked at me and shrugged. I told you she was a professional. You paid me for the night. Did you want to go to your place and have some fun? I wanted to, so we went. I waited a week after the wedding and finished my project. Both Sam and her company received envelopes in the mail with fake return addresses. Both envelopes contained a brief letter and a set of photos. Sam's letter stated, Dear Mrs. Harris, I'm sorry to break the bad news, but it seems that your husband and my wife met while she was in your town. The private investigator hired for evidence provided me with these photos. I have only included the ones that show his face so that you have no doubt that it is him. I wasn't going to inform you except that I just received a message from my doctor that she has given me a social disease. You might want to get tested. Signed, your husband's ex-husband-to-be. The letter to the CEO stated, Dear Sir, I just thought you should know what kind of man works at your company. According to my wife, he picked her up in a bar, got her drunk, and infected her with a social disease. I don't know if this letter will reach you or if you care, but I would watch this. He seems to have no morals. Signed, One Regretful Husband. Things quickly fell into place. Sam's family dissolved the marriage, Jacob was fired, and rumor has it they were both on medication. It's helpful to have a friend in the county health department. I was largely occupied with getting my life together. Sometimes I envisioned subsequent scenarios. In one scenario, I beat the out of Jacob. In another, I pretend to go back to Sam, take her to a foreign country, and then leave her there without any cards, passport, etc. I could have done the same thing if it wasn't for the vision of her mother and what it would do to her. I may have been that cruel to my ex-wife, but not to my ex-mother-in-law's daughter. But I quickly lost interest as my new job became more interesting and challenging. It went on like that until the next Simoncelli family picnic. Uncle Vin, my father's older brother, was there. Uncle Vin is related, if you know what I mean. He beckoned me over and we chatted quietly. Johnny, tell me about your divorce. What happened? I liked that girl. I told Uncle Vin the Reader's Digest version of our breakup. What did you do about it? Then I explained what I did to get revenge. It's awful, but it's not exactly scorched earth. No, Uncle Vin, I did everything I could to put it behind me, took the high road. I told him why. That's good. And those are good reasons. You know, that baseball coach really did you a good favor. Uncle Vin was neither more nor less of a bigot when it came to racial issues, but he always thought it was funny that a black man from the slums of Chicago had as much influence on my life as my father had. If you had gone into your flashy daddy, you wouldn't be the man you are today. Many times I had to calm my little brother down, or he would have ended up dead or in jail. You ever talk to Coach Price? Just a few times, and not since my senior year of college. I kind of lost touch with him. You should look him up. He volunteers at the Boys and Girls Club on West Palmer. Let him know what he did for you. It's nice for a man to hear that once in a while, but right now, go up to your dad, give him a hug, and tell him you love him. He needs to hear it too. Uncle Vin was a funny guy. I heard a lot of people were afraid of him, but he always acted like a teddy bear around me. I did go to see Coach Price, and he convinced me to start volunteering at the club. I even started dating his niece, a beautiful woman. But that's another story and will have to be posted in the romance section of the website. In other words, no drama, just love. One last thing. For my 30th birthday, I received a birthday card from Uncle Vin. It simply said, "Happy birthday, nephew. Nobody makes fun of Simon Chelly." It seems a certain Jacob Harris was found last night in an alley behind a bar he frequents. He was the victim of a robbery. Nothing life-threatening, but he had a broken nose, several fingers and ribs, and 2 badly swollen nuts. I guess his black belt must have been left at home that night.